Maybe you didn't come this far by chance. Perhaps there's something within you, a whisper, an unease, a silent feeling, telling you that there's something greater behind what you feel. There are moments when the body speaks for itself, when desire pulses like a hidden prayer, and we don't always know how to explain it. It's not just attraction. It's not merely a physical memory. It's an energy that flows through you, that moves you, that calls you. And what if I told you there's a spiritual purpose in this? That the pleasure you feel, or have felt, for a single person, could be a call from your soul? Many won't understand, because we live in a world where spirituality and pleasure have been separated, as if light couldn't inhabit the body, as if the divine were always far away, in the heavens, unreachable, and desire was always seen as sin, something to be tamed or hidden. But you know, deep down, you feel it. That connection, yes, that one, wasn't just chemistry, nor just emotion. It was something that broke time, that unraveled logic, that pierced through the eyes, the skin, the silence, the breath. Have you ever felt like you were standing in front of someone and simply disappeared? As if everything around you vanished, as if the touch wasn't just skin, but a portal. There are encounters that seem to activate something dormant within us. A memory that doesn't come from rational memory, but from the soul. A memory of something that has always been. And in those encounters, pleasure isn't just pleasure. It's an energetic scream, an unlocking, a secret language between two bodies that have known each other in other dimensions. This is what we will talk about here, about the impact of sexual energy between twin flames, about how pleasure, when experienced at this level of connection, transforms into a force of healing, of breaking down masks, of rebirth. And before you think this is just poetry, listen with your soul, because perhaps you're trying to understand why you can't forget that person, why the simple thought still stirs your entire energetic field, why even when apart, there's still a vibration in the air, an invisible bond, a frequency that continues to echo. You might be asking yourself, was it just sex? Or maybe, why did that experience mark me so much? And even more, am I crazy for feeling all of this even after so long? The answer is simple. No, you're not crazy. You're awakening. Awakening to a new understanding of pleasure. A pleasure that is not merely sensory, but spiritual. A pleasure that reveals truths, that lays bare wounds, and shows where there are still blockages, that activates hidden memories in the soul's DNA. Because the body speaks? Yes. But when two twin flames meet, it's the soul that screams. It screams of longing, of recognition, of mission. Yes, mission. Because the pleasure between twin flames doesn't come just to satisfy the ego or desire. It comes to remind, to awaken, to catalyze transformations that could never be done alone. It comes to show what still needs to be healed, and at the same time, to seal a bond that precedes physical birth. No, you are not alone. What you feel has a name, has roots, has truth, and it doesn't matter if the other person has already left, or if they are silent. Energy doesn't lie. The body doesn't lie. The vibration between you is still alive, because something in you has also been activated, and this can no longer be ignored. So, if this touches something within you, if this message resonates with your most intimate and inexplicable experiences, I invite you to stay with me, because we're going to dive into this little discussed universe, often denied but absolutely real, the intertwining of pleasure and spirituality, and more than that, how the sexual energy of twin flames is in fact a sacred tool for awakening. If you feel that this video is for you, if something vibrated within you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Share it with those you know need to hear this. And get ready, because we're going beyond appearances. We're going to touch the soul with truths that liberate. When we talk about pleasure and spirituality, we are delving into a field that has been distorted for centuries. We were taught to fear the body, to distrust desire, to disconnect spirit from flesh. The result of this is that thousands of people today live divided in half. They want to feel whole, but they don't know how to integrate all that they are. And when they meet someone who awakens them so intensely, so deeply, so inexplicably, they end up getting scared, or sabotaging themselves, or losing themselves. The sexual energy between twin flames is not just intense, it is revealing. It doesn't come just to satisfy a desire. It comes to unveil layers of the soul that have been buried. That's why, often, along with pleasure, comes also pain, doubt, confusion. It's as if the encounter activates a force within us that suddenly takes away our grounding. Why am I feeling all of this? Why does this person make me lose control? These are common questions, but behind them lies something greater. The soul is recognizing its other half. And when this happens, there's no way to pretend that nothing has changed. Even if you distance yourselves, even if everything seems to have ended, the energy has already been activated, and the spiritual body feels. It feels the absence, feels the presence, feels the emptiness, and feels the fullness that was lived, even if only for moments. And this is where the true conflict begins, because the mind tries to understand what the spirit already knows. The ego tries to control what the soul has already surrendered. Fear tries to block what destiny has drawn. And in this battlefield, the person feels everything at once: longing, anger, guilt, passion, abandonment, desire, silence, and a strange certainty that that connection was different, that it wasn't just any relationship, that there was a key there, a turning point. You may be experiencing exactly this right now, feeling lost, disconnected, with a heart in pieces and at the same time with a flame ignited inside, as if something had begun and there was no turning back. And the truth is this: when it comes to twin flames, there is no going back to what you were before, because this meeting did not come just to complete. It came to deconstruct. Yes, deconstruct, because the ego will want to maintain old patterns. It will try to fit the connection into molds that no longer work. It will seek security, control, immediate reciprocity. But what twin flames awaken cannot be contained in formulas. It is a love that begins where control ends. That reveals itself in absence, that transforms in silence, that amplifies in pain. A love that does not fit, because it expands, it elevates. And it is at this time that dilemmas arise. If it's true love, why does it hurt so much? If it's my twin flame, why did they leave? Why, after so much pleasure and connection, is there this emptiness? These are questions that cross those who live this type of bond, and they are legitimate. They are human, but perhaps it is time to look beyond them. Because what is happening to you is not a punishment. It is a calling. You are not alone in this experience. Thousands of people around the world are awakening to the same reality. They are experiencing the same highs and lows, the same silences, the same spiritual reunions, even when there is no longer physical contact. The energy is the proof, and energy does not lie. This journey is profoundly intimate, profoundly real, and profoundly challenging, because it forces us to face everything we have avoided for years. Fears of abandonment, unresolved needs, attachment patterns, childhood wounds, distortions about what it means to love. All of this comes to the surface, not because the universe wants to hurt you, but because it wants to heal you. And to heal, it is necessary to see, to feel, to admit. The pleasure between twin flames is often the first portal. It opens the body to open the soul. It activates the memory to summon the spirit. And after that, the process begins. The deconstruction, the cleansing, the reunion with parts of yourself that you had forgotten, the urge to flee, and at the same time, the desire to stay, because there is something greater there, something that transcends the physical, that transcends history, that transcends time. It's as if that body you touched were not just a body, but a mirror, a temple, a map, and the energy you shared was not just pleasure, but code, a code that your soul recognized. And now, even if it hurts, something has been activated in you, and there is no way to pretend it didn't happen. There is no way to silence what vibrates inside. There is no way to ignore the calling. This part of the path is the most confusing, the most painful, the most lonely, but it is also the most necessary, because before going outward, the reunion needs to happen within. And this journey is just beginning. When separation happens between twin flames, the mind often collapses. The pain does not seem proportional to the time spent together, nor to the history lived. There is a feeling of tearing, of loss, of unbearable absence, as if the soul had been split in two again. And the confusion this generates is not just emotional, it is spiritual. Because the rupture does not just hit the heart, it crosses all levels of being: body, mind, soul, energy. Everything feels, everything breaks, everything silences. And it is in this silence that many go crazy. Because it is not a common silence. It is a silence loaded with messages that the ego cannot interpret. The soul cries out for answers, but the mind does not understand the codes. And what was supposed to be pleasure turns into pain. What was supposed to be light turns into shadow. And what was a meeting transforms into separation. But does it really? This is where the spiritual conflict begins to reveal itself. Because when we talk about twin flames, we are not just talking about romance, partnership, or an intense connection. We are talking about a call to awaken. And awakening often hurts, because it requires the illusion to die. It requires the ego to bow. It requires the soul to take the helm. And the ego does not want this. The ego wants control, security, predictability. The ego wants promises, guarantees, and happy endings. But the twin flame process is not about endings. It is about expansion. And expansion requires rupture. Therefore, when the other leaves, or when the relationship collapses, what is happening is more than a loss. It is an energetic reconfiguration, a recalibration of your spiritual field. Something has been activated, and now, the universe will work to realign everything that is still out of place. At this point, many feel betrayed. By God, by fate, by spirituality. Why did they allow me to feel something so deep if it was supposed to end like this? But perhaps the correct question is another. What is this experience trying to show me about myself? Because contrary to what it seems, the end is not a punishment. It is a mirror. Yes, a mirror. Because the twin flame comes to reflect what is still wounded in you, what still needs love, what is still unbalanced. The pleasure you felt was not just physical. It was an energetic explosion. It was the universe telling you, look at this. Look at what you feel. Look at what you still need to heal. And when the other leaves, the message remains, because their mission was often just to activate, and then leave you with yourself. It may seem cruel, but it is divine, because the soul understands what the ego cannot bear. And in this process, separation is only apparent, because energetically, nothing has been lost. Everything has been recorded. Everything has been sealed. Everything continues to exist in another layer of reality. And while you try to understand, the universe listens. It listens to what is behind the "it's over." And what he hears often are not words. They are vibrations. The universe listens to your fear. It listens to your anger. It listens to your guilt. But above all, it listens to your call for awakening. And that's why, even in pain, something in you begins to change. The spiritual quest intensifies. The signs increase. The dreams become more vivid. The intuition expands. Because the process has been activated. And now, it's impossible to go back to sleep. You begin to realize that that person was not just a passion. They were a key, an activation, a bridge. And that despite the absence, the energy remains alive. The bond has not been broken. It has only been hidden. And this absence becomes a fertile ground for the birth of something new, something that begins within you. It's common to feel that the pain has no end, that the emptiness is permanent. But gradually, you start to understand. The pain was the portal. The collapse was the invitation. The end was the beginning. Because without deconstruction, there is no truth. Without loss, there is no meeting with oneself. And without the mirror of the twin flame, perhaps you would never have looked so deeply. The pleasure you once shared was real, but it was only the surface of what needed to be revealed. Because behind the skin, the touch, the desire, there was something much greater, a spiritual memory, an energetic mission. And now, This mission is calling you to the next step. You can try to run away, you can try to erase it, you can even try to replace it, but nothing will fill that space, because it is not a hole, it is a temple, a sacred space within you that has been opened, and that now needs to be honored, with silence, with truth, with presence, and with surrender. Because it is in surrender that revelations happen, and that is what we will talk about next. There comes a point in the journey where resisting becomes unbearable. The soul, exhausted from trying to control, from searching for meaning in the ruins of what was, begins to surrender, not out of weakness, but out of spiritual exhaustion. True surrender is not passivity. It is a deep yielding to the reality of what is, even if the ego still screams, even if the heart still asks for answers, even if the body still cries out for the presence of the other. Surrender is accepting that what came to you was not a mistake. That flame, that pleasure, that pain, that separation, all had a reason that perhaps you still do not fully understand, but that, deep down, makes sense somewhere in your soul. Surrender is when you stop fighting against the flow and begin to learn from it, when the silence of the other is no longer a punishment, but an opportunity to listen to yourself. The silence. The silence. It hurts because it echoes. It bothers because it confronts us with what we avoid. But it is also in silence that great healings happen, because it is in it that the soul whispers what the mind never wanted to hear. In retreat, the ego calms down, the heart begins to organize itself, and the energy finds space to realign. It's as if, in the void left by the absence of the other, a new presence begins to be born. Yours, your soul, returning to occupy its temple. This is the moment of rebalancing. And rebalancing does not happen from the outside in. It does not depend on the return of the twin flame, nor on messages, nor on reunions. Healing happens in silence, in the deep embrace of oneself. It is there, between silent tears and lonely nights, that something in you begins to rise, a force that does not come from the mind, nor from desire. It comes from your essence, from the part of you that survived everything. Because even after the pain, you are here. Even after feeling shattered, something in you is being rebuilt, and that is where transformation begins. The pleasure that once depended on the other begins to find new ways to express itself. You start to feel pleasure in breathing consciously, in being at peace with yourself, in feeling the energy flow without despair. A deeper pleasure begins to be born, the pleasure of being whole. The spirituality of twin flames is not just about the reunion of two people. It is about the reunion of being with its own light. And often, separation is precisely the bitter medicine the soul needs to remember who it is. Because while you were seeking the other, you may have forgotten yourself. And now, in retreat, life calls you back home. Not the physical home, but the inner home, the center of your being. There is no rush in this process. Each soul has its time. Each pain has its rhythm. Each healing happens at its right moment. But one thing is certain. When you start to reconnect with yourself, everything changes. The memories are still there. The longing may never completely go away. But despair fades. The emptiness fills. The anguish gives way to a new serenity. Because your energy begins to purify itself. Yes, because the sexual energy of twin flames, when misunderstood, can generate obsession, dependency, suffering. But when healed, it transforms into creative power, into inspiration, into sensitivity, into presence. This energy, once directed outward, now begins to move inward, to activate your intuition, to expand your consciousness, to refine your vibration. And the more you retreat, the more you hear yourself. You start to realize that not everything was about the other, that the twin flame awakened parts of you that had always been dormant, and that now, even alone, you are capable of feeling the energy flow. The love continues, but it transforms. It stops being a need and becomes abundance. It stops being lack and becomes awareness. This is the healing, not the healing that waits for the other to return, but the healing that happens when you return to yourself, when you stop asking, "Why did he leave?" and start asking, what does this pain want to teach me? When you stop waiting for external signs and begin to follow your own light, and then something changes in your field, in your gaze, in your frequency. You begin to become magnetic in a new way, not because you want to attract someone, but because you are finally aligned with who you really are. Surrender is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new cycle, a cycle in which love continues to exist, but now without chains. A cycle in which pleasure is sacred, but no longer conditioned. A cycle in which spirituality is not escape, but presence, where you begin to walk lightly, even carrying in your heart a story that still pulses. And it is from this point that the true awakening happens. After everything that was broken, felt, silenced, and healed, something new is born within you. A different presence, a firmer gaze, a more conscious breath. The reunion with your twin flame may or may not happen in the physical plane, but one truth is established. You are no longer the same person who started this journey, and that is no small thing. This is revolution. Sexual energy, once uncontrolled or projected onto another, now balances within you as a vital force, a magnetic presence, a creative power. You begin to remember that pleasure was not just an escape point, but a starting point. That love was not just projection, but a mirror. And that connection that took your breath away also returned your soul, even in absence, even in pain. The true encounter with the higher self happens when you stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a channel. You were not chosen by mistake. What you lived was real, yes, but it was also symbolic, sacred, necessary. It served as a code to unlock within you what was dormant, your spiritual sovereignty. Sovereignty has nothing to do with arrogance. It has to do with belonging, with the silent certainty of someone who has crossed the desert and now recognizes their own strength. You begin to realize that you no longer need to beg for love, presence, validation. Because you have become presence, you validated yourself in pain. You sustained yourself on days when no one saw. And now, your soul has returned to occupy the throne of your being. And with that, self-love is born. Not that superficial love, filled with cliches and empty self-help, but the self-love that comes from the crossing, the love that was built while everything was crumbling, the love you had to learn when there was nothing left to hold on to. This love is not vanity, it is foundation, it is temple, it is spiritual maturity. You begin to feel that the energetic magnetism is no longer outside. It pulses within you, because you have become whole, and what is whole attracts differently. It attracts by vibration. It attracts by truth. It attracts because it no longer needs. And precisely for that reason, it can choose. It can honor. It can share without losing itself. This is the turning point of the journey, the point at which you understand that the love you seek is not lost. It has merely transformed. It has transmuted. It now pulses within you. And for this reason, even if the other never returns, you are no longer needy. You are whole. You are no longer lacking. You are in connection. The relationship between twin flames, at this stage, stops being an energetic prison and becomes a fertile ground for expansion. You understand that loving the other does not mean depending on them, that missing someone does not mean stagnation, that desiring a reunion does not prevent you from fully living the now. Everything changes, because you have changed. The love that remains is the one that respects the soul's timing, and this applies to both you and the other flame. What you vibrate now is freedom. It is maturity. It is clarity. You no longer live in function of what was, but in alignment with what is. And this presence, this serenity, this light, this is the manifestation of your higher self, the self that knows, that sees beyond the surface, that is not shaken by absence, because it knows the invisible presence of love, the self that understands that everything had a purpose, that the pleasure experienced was a seed, that the separation was preparation, that the silence was medicine, and now you are ready to live something greater, be it with the twin flame or with life, because love is not lost. It transforms, and when it transforms, it liberates. It no longer demands possession, response, immediate return. It simply vibrates. And this vibration is the language of awakened souls. You now speak this language with your body, with your spirit, with your energy. And that is why you magnetize. Because there is no longer desperation. There is presence. There is no longer neediness. There is completeness. There is no longer imprisonment. There is flow. You did not fade away at the end of the story. You ignited. You crossed the fire and now carry light. This light is yours. It was earned. And nothing, nor anyone, can take it from you. Getting here has not been easy. You know, every word of this journey has stirred deep layers, awakened memories, opened portals. They were not just phrases. They were mirrors. And if you felt all of this, it is because the journey is yours. Because this story, even with unique nuances, also speaks of you, of your soul, of your search, of your truth. Not just anyone reaches this point. Many stop halfway. Many give up when the pain tightens. Many close their eyes when the soul begins to scream. But you remained. You crossed the fire. You allowed yourself to feel. And that, in itself, is healing. It is revolution. It is rebirth. Now, you are no longer the same. You may still carry the same dreams, the same memories, the same desires, but you look at them from a new place, a more centered place, a more mature place, a more awakened place. You now recognize the signs, understand the silences, embrace the voids, not because you resigned, but because you understood. And understanding transforms everything. The pain that once dragged you now becomes strength. The pleasure that once confused you now becomes sacred. The love that once slipped away now expands within you, because what remained was real, but what was born, that is eternal, and no one can take away what you built in silence, in the invisible, in the intimate. You went to the bottom of the well and discovered that there was sky there too. That's why now you walk differently. Your steps are no longer driven by despair, but by presence. You no longer wait with your eyes closed. You live with your eyes open. And if it's to reunite with the twin flame, let it be with truth, without fantasies, without urgency, without that weight that used to hurt you. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay too. Because true love is never limited to one form. This love now lives in you. It vibrates in you. It heals through you. And when you move from that place, everything changes. People feel it. The universe responds. Cycles organize themselves. The energy purifies. You no longer chase after. You attract. You no longer beg for love. You emanate. You magnetize. This is the consequence of having touched your own soul. You are back to yourself, whole, radiant, serene, and it doesn't matter what the other does or doesn't do. Their mission has been fulfilled, to awaken you. The rest is choice. Love remains free, and because it is free, it flourishes. Perhaps there is still a thread between you, an invisible bond, a frequency that pulses when you least expect it. And this is not an illusion. It is spiritual memory. But now, you no longer cling to it. You honor, respect, and let it be. And if there is a reunion, it will be beautiful. But if not, it will be light. Because you no longer depend on the future to live your light now. And it is with this light that I conclude this journey with you. A journey made of truths, shadows, touches, silences, tears, and new beginnings. A journey that only makes sense when it is felt. And you felt it. You were present. You opened up. And that changes everything. If this journey touched your soul, I invite you to be part of this space of expansion. Subscribe to the channel, because we still have much to explore. Like this video if it brought you healing or clarity, and share it with those you know are experiencing something similar. Sometimes, a single word can save a heart that is about to give up. And tell me here in the comments, what did this journey awaken in you? In which part of the journey did you recognize yourself? What part hurt you the most, or healed you? This is our sacred space of exchange, where the invisible gains voice, where spirituality is not dogma, but a living experience, where love is not imprisonment, but freedom, where pleasure is not taboo, but a creative force. And I leave you with a phrase that is not an end, but a reminder. When the soul awakens, the body becomes a temple, silence becomes prayer, and love transforms into a light that never goes out. You are that light. Never forget that.